Hey everyone, my name is Charlie and today I would like to share every single Doctor Who book in my collection. I recorded the beginning of this video a week ago, but unfortunately between receiving a phone call during that video, which ruined things recording wise, I've lost that clip. So instead, we're just going to re-record the beginning. The hair's a bit different. It's a bit of a mess, but that's the story of my life at the moment. Why did I want to create this video? Towards the end of last year and the beginning of this year, when I made the decision that I wasn't going to be purchasing any new books until I'd read the ones on my shelves, I knowingly chose to leave off the Doctor Who books because I know from prior experience that if I feel like they're becoming too much of an obligation, then I will unhaul them unread and then feel regret and want to repurchase them. And also because the project I had in mind for this collection, I always envisaged starting in January, and I didn't want to overface myself with too many projects. It's why I decided that I wasn't going to try and read all of the Anthony Trollope on my shelves as well this year. I was going to try and read 4 this year. These books got pushed to the wayside. Many years ago, I started my collection of Doctor Who books, specifically the ones that the BBC produced prior to Christopher Eccleston taking over as the Doctor. My main focus has been the 8th Doctor adventures for years, not the big Finnish productions, although I would like to listen to them one day. These were the novels in which you had the companion Sam moving on to Fitz and Angie and Trix and all of those people. In this video, I get into all of the books that I now own and what my aims are in future with these books. I go into how these books were acquired in the video that I have got recorded, so I will get into that now, and you get to see the collection of books, but I don't necessarily go into great detail about them. I just thought it was a nice thing to do as we approach the series finale of Doctor Who, and also give me a new project as I slowly reduce the number of unread books on my shelves. If you hadn't guessed already, then I was one of those rather nerdy teenagers. When Doctor Who first came back in 2005, a friend of mine was very much into classic Doctor Who, and that had been all that he talked about before it came back. And his enthusiasm is what sparked the enthusiasm in the rest of our friendship group. And we would go into the town centre and we'd visit all the charity shops on a Saturday and we'd buy up whatever Doctor Who memorabilia we could find. And I gained a rather large collection of Doctor Who books. One of my favourite things was the 8th Doctor's adventures, because I felt as though there was so much room for creativity there because we only ever got the one film. But one of my favourite purchases was when I went into British Heart Foundation in Macclesfield and found a load of the Virgin New Adventures and got them all for £10. You know, like back then, the price of Doctor Who books was relatively low because it hadn't come back and become the phenomenon that it is now. Then about 10 years ago, no, it can't have been 10 years. Then about 8 years ago, going through one of those really nice mental health moments, I decided to give my entire collection to the charity shop because I wasn't reading the books that I'd got and they were just sitting on a shelf or in boxes because I didn't have the room for them and I was prioritising other books. A couple of years later, in fact, it was probably immediate that I was regretting getting rid of this box of books, and my brother told me not to, but when do we ever listen to our siblings? And I decided that I was going to start buying up my collection again, getting some of the books that I wanted, but mainly focusing on the 8th Doctor adventures because, as I say, I felt like there was so much room for creativity there. One of the things that I kept from my teenage years that I didn't get rid of was the 8th Doctor comic strips Endgame, and this was the first volume. I've never read any more than this first volume, and this now stands as the first book I ever dropped in the bath about 20 minutes ago as I was trying to dust it and it fell out of my hands directly into a load of suds. So it's had a very nice wash indeed. And now we can move on to what's in the box. And I have no idea, because at one point I had a list of all of the 8th Doctor books, and I would go on eBay and I would buy bundles, or I would, at one point somebody was getting rid of a large collection and I paid £60 for the collection. It was like £30 for the box and then £30 for postage, and then I sold any of the ones that I didn't want back on eBay and made that 60 quid back on 2 books. So we're okay. It really, technically, cost me nothing. First we have Salvation, which is a story featuring the first Doctor, and which I remember having borrowed off the same friend I was talking about earlier. That is something that we would regularly do too when we were younger, is that we would swap the Doctor Who books that the other hadn't read so that we could read as much as possible. And I have such nostalgia for these books, and yeah, although I don't often get to chat to this friend much anymore, I still very fondly look back on how he shares so much of his collection with me, so I got to experience these books. I'm not going in any sort of order, so the next book we have is Loving the Alien, which is the 7th Doctor, and is this where there's something happening here that was very thrilling at the time. I can't remember what. Maybe I will revisit these books one day. So far, all I'm seeing is books that the friend had. So then we have The Face of the Enemy, which is the Master and Unit and Ian and Barbara, and doesn't feature the Doctor at all, apparently. And then we have Last of the Gaderene, which is a 3rd Doctor adventure with Jo and the Unit. Again, all of these ones I remember borrowing from my friends. Some of them I will have read, some of them I will have returned to him unread, because that's just who I was. Then we have 2 of these books, which I got from the charity shop. This is Fear of the Dark by Trevor Baxendale, which is the 5th Doctor, but I don't know which companion we get here. I know that sometimes in the novels they would just do 5th Doctor and Nyssa, and that was a pairing that I quite liked, just the 2 of them on their own. And then we have Earthworld by Jacqueline Rayner, which is this the first one to introduce the companion Angie? I don't know. It doesn't match any of the other Doctor Who books that from this era, but I don't mind that. Then we have a couple of the missing adventures. So we have the Menagerie, which is the 2nd Doctor and Jamie, and the Ghosts of N-Space by Barry Letts, which is the 3rd. Well, that's Barry Letts and that's Martin Day. Now we go on to the new Doctor Who adventures. I have Original Sin by Andy Lane, Warlock by Andrew Cartmel, Conundrum by Steve Lyons, Parasite by Jim Mortimore, and Transit by Ben Aaronovitch. One thing that really upsets me about this whole situation where I got rid of my collection is that I had the first ever novel to feature Bernice Summerfield, and she went on to become something of this huge figure in the Doctor Who universe, well, for fans anyway, and I just regret that part, that I had so many of her stories, and if I want them, I'm going to have to find them again. And Lord, are they expensive. And then I have The Murder Game by Steve Lyons and Dreams of Empire by Justin Richards. Once again, I know that I borrowed both of these books off that friend I was just talking about. I have mentioned them on this channel before because they released a novel, but let's try and keep some sort of data protection here. I know that I borrowed these because at one point I watched Tomb of the Cybermen and became a huge fanboy of Patrick Troughton for a while. That's what would happen if I ever went to a Doctor that I hadn't watched before. They would immediately become my new favourite. And Tomb of the Cybermen is one that I bought with some birthday money, and then I was staying at my grandmother's and it was the only DVD of my own that I had there, so I regularly rewatched that over that summer. And yeah, so Patrick Troughton became a favourite then, and usually my favourite changes depending on how I'm feeling that day. And now we move on to the 8th Doctor adventures, the ones that I have been trying to amass for about 20 years now. This collection has been building since about 2018. Sometimes I'd have to restrain myself and say, no, you're not going to read all of these books, so just hold back and don't buy so many. At one point I was buying them in order, so there will be some orders to this, but then things change. But for now, we have The 8 Doctors by Terrance Dicks. I remember reading this. Then we have Vampire Science by Jonathan Blum and Kate Orman. I did not read this. I had never been able to find it, so just bought it off eBay in the end. Then we have The Bodysnatchers. Again, the friend did lend me his copy of this, so I got to read this about 20 years ago. Then we have Genocide by Paul Leonard. War of the Daleks by John Peel. Alien Bodies by Lawrence Miles. The Scarlet Empress by Paul Mars. Now, this introduces Iris Wildthyme, who has been voiced by Katie Manning, and the author now has a YouTube channel of whose videos I am quite behind on now, but Paul Mars also wrote the Brenda and Effie series, which was like the Bride of Frankenstein opening a B&B in a Whitby book that I have read and talked about before on this channel, so yes, never read that one. Then we have The Taint by Michael Collier. Autumn Mist by David A. McIntee. Interference Book 1 and Interference Book 2, both by Lawrence Miles. This was a huge deal when I was younger, and me and this friend would search everywhere. We'd go to the second-hand book place in the middle of town, we'd check every charity shop, and we never came across these books. Then I have The Taking of Planet 5 by Simon Boucher-Jones and Mark Clapham. Frontier Worlds by Peter Angelhides, and Parallel 59 by Natalie Dallaire and Stephen Cole. Fun fact, bought this from Poundland back in the day. Didn't pay £1 for it the second time round. We're going out of order. I don't know whether you notice. And just ignore all the dust flying around me at this moment in time. I'm going to have to dust these books and remove them from beneath my bed. Then we have Kursaal by Peter Angelhides. Placebo Effect by Gary Russell. There was something about this that my friend recommended it to me for a reason. I can't remember what it was about this book that he had me read it. Then we have Val Tempest by Jim Mortimore. The Blue Angel by Paul Mars and Jeremy Hode. Escape Velocity by Colin Brake and Trading Futures by Lance Parkin. This one here, my friend lent me his copy, then bought me a copy because he said that it was like James Bond but as a Doctor Who story. Then I gave him his copy back, and somehow at one point in my house I did have 3 copies of this, and I have no idea why. Trading Futures seems to be one that a lot of people had, and so I don't know why I ended up with so many copies. Then we have The Shadows of Avalon by Paul Cornell, The Banquo Legacy by Andy Lane and Justin Richards, and The Ancestor Cell by Peter Angelhides and Stephen Cole. They were a huge deal to Doctor Who fans back in the day, I'm pretty confident. Then we have The Burning by Justin Richards, The Turing Test by Paul Leonard. I hadn't realised I got so many of these books. Father Time by Lance Parkin. Vanishing Point by Stephen Cole. Eater of Wasps by Trevor Baxendale. A Year of Intelligent Tigers by Kate Orman. The Slow Empire by Dave Stone. Grim Reality by Simon Boucher-Jones and Kelly Hale. The Domino Effect by David Bishop. Timeless by Stephen Cole. Scream of the Shulker by Paul Cornell. Or is it Shalker? I don't know, but I remember watching the animated version, and then we got to see Richard E. Grant again as the Doctor in Rogue, and I didn't even know that this was in this box. Well, actually, I didn't know a lot of these books were in this box because they've been in the box and they've been forgotten, and I could not tell you when I last had it open. We have Dreamstone Moon by Paul Leonard. This is part of, I believe, is it 4 books? One of which I think I've mentioned here, maybe more. This one was one that I found with the cover bent in half underneath something in my bedroom ages ago. I didn't even know I got it. We're just telling you what a good person I am. The one that ended it all, The Gallifrey Chronicles by Lance Parkin. That's the entire Doctor Who collection of books. And why am I mentioning it here? Because the entire challenge that I have for myself, I don't think is going to be taking place this year. Every January for the last few years, I've considered beginning to read the 8th Doctor adventures again and just run through them as I would any other book series. As we reach the point of this series of Doctor Who ending, as I now have fewer than 40 books left unread on my shelves, I'm wondering, is this the next project that I tackle? Finally reading some of these books that I've kept hidden away, that I don't necessarily go to because I wonder what people will think. Does that mean I'm less of a serious reader? That sort of thing. I mean, I've never been a serious reader. I don't think I do anything seriously. I also thought it'd be good for me to look at and catalogue these things. And the amount of dust that I've just unleashed in this room, that means I'm probably going to have to open a window and take an antihistamine. My goodness, I did not realise how long it had been and how much could accumulate. Either way, Them's the books. If you've read any of these books and would like to discuss them, then please feel free to do so in the comments. Are you a fan of Doctor Who? Do you have any Doctor Who memorabilia of your own? Are you part of any fandoms? Let's have all of these conversations in the comments. I hope that you've got something out of this video, because until next time, that is all.